James Lindsay, the mathematician who's actually become one of the most important people in the country right now, fighting critical race theory and the adoption of critical race theory in American public schools, and who gets so much stick for telling the truth and pulling the curtain back on these people, did a really hysterically funny series of tweets about Nicole Hannah-Jones. Nicole Hannah-Jones is the reporter from the New York Times who came up with the 1619 Project, the idea that the real founding of this country was not 1776, it was 1619 when the first slaves came off a ship into the New World. She's a race baiter. She sees racism everywhere. She makes her money on racism. She makes her fame on racism. She feeds her ego on finding racism everywhere. And he did this really funny set of tweets where he used the language that critical race theory people use, but he just substituted something else. He's been calling her a clown, and she is a clown. She's an intellectual clown, but you know what else she is? She also looks like a clown. This is a woman, and I know some of you can't see this. It's fine. She can do this, but we can notice. She's picked a really unnatural shade of red in her hair. It's bright and loud and in your face. It's almost like it's the coloration you see on poisonous tree frogs, right? So many of these people look like they're adopting colors that when they occur in nature, they say, this plant is toxic, this toad is poisonous. And again, because the visual is part of the image here, and she's wearing this shade of red lipstick that so clashes with her hair that you have to think she just wants people to look at her. She is screaming, look at me, look at me, look at me, look at me. And that's fine. But we don't have to pretend she's not doing this. So James says, clown fragility is a series of rhetorical maneuvers deployed by clowns to avoid engaging with the true fact of their clownery. Most clowns have not developed the necessary clown humility or clown stamina to long endure exposure of their clown tactics. Thus, they tend to lash out. The reason this is so funny is this is exactly what the critical race theory people say about white people. Just take the word clown out and insert white instead, and that's what we're talking about. And of course, Nicole Hannah-Jones is hiding behind the easy. She wants people to feel sorry for her, so she's pretending that she doesn't understand that James is turning her own words against her. She's pretending that he's going after her looks and that she's hurt by that because this is what misogynistic men do. Notice this tactic. So here's what she says in response. I don't know what type of human thinks this is cool, but what I will say is I hope he resolved whatever ego he was trying to stroke or insecurity he was trying to address by inviting people to insult me for my looks. Oh, piss off, you big phony. More in sorrow than in anger. She's loving this. He's not going after her for her looks. First of all, there's an implication there. The implication is that somebody's been insulting her because of the natural features of her face. Nobody's talking about whether her facial features are beautiful or not. They're talking about her ridiculous, conscious, artificial style choices, first of all. But really, more about the content of what she's saying. But this passes over real well. This gets every lefty, and it especially gets lefty women. They are so primed to believe that women are constantly being policed for their looks. They're either whores or saints, and that they can't possibly please anybody. And if they make pretty, then people won't appreciate them. But if they don't make pretty, they're called ugly. It's really over-egged. She goes on. Then we're going to wrap up after this. Nicole Hannah-Jones, who calls herself, by the way, Ida Bay Wells as a Twitter name. Ida B. Wells is the name of the first famous black investigative journalist. She calls herself Ida Bay Wells. Like, we can't all see the egotism in this. So she says, y'all have no idea what my inbox looks like on a daily basis because of how the right writes and tweets about me. And I know this site brings out the utter worst in people, but I somehow still have the ability to be shocked by how debased some of us are. And let's be clear, this is unprovoked. I didn't tweet at him or about him. Okay, honey. You know, Sometimes mockery's the point. There are a lot of ideas that are worth mocking, and there are a lot of people who are worth mocking. And yes, when they use their artificial protective coloration to defend themselves against mocking, they should be mocked for their ridiculous artificial coloration for their theater. For more conversation on the dark and disordered psychology that shapes today's cultural and political left, subscribe to our weekly audio podcast on iTunes, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Pandora, Google Podcasts, and virtually anywhere else you get your podcasts. Let's learn to recognize these dynamics and call them what they are. Subscribe to Disaffected to learn how to break the spell.